I am blessed as well. Welcome to the show. And tonight we take you to Nigeria for the latest as the youth protest over bad governance. The protest is entering day 6 today.
Good governance is your right, and that is what we have all sworn to give you. You don't need to protest to remind us of this sacred responsibility.
The latest from Nigeria for you, but we're also taking you to East Africa, where landslide caused by heavy rains in southern Ethiopia has killed at least 13 people. We have the latest for you, but for now, we bring you the headlines across Africa.
40 people have been arrested in northern Nigeria for waving Russia's national flag during protests against the high cost of living and what they feel is bad governance. Amid this crackdown, Army Chief Christopher Musa warned that it is a treasonable offense to fly the flags of foreign countries. Demonstrators have been chanting slogans such as "We are hungry," whilst a minority have been picked waving Russia's flag and voicing support for Russia's President Vladimir Putin. According to local media, some of these protesters have called on Moscow to rescue them. The subsequent arrests are seen as an attempt to stifle any fledgling support for Russia in Nigeria, a leading oil producer and a key ally of Western powers. According to Human Rights Watch, Chad's military was responsible for the deaths of several detainees arrested following protests in October 2022. At least 4 people died en route to Koro Toro prison and 6 others died there. At the time, security forces in the Central African nation fired live ammunition, killing at least 60 people during demonstrations against interim leader Mahamat Debi Itno's 2-year extension of power. The unrest was unprecedented in Chad, which saw little public dissent during the regime of Debi Itno's father, who ruled for more than 3 decades until his assassination in 2021. The Chadian government maintains that the 2022 protests amounted to an insurrection and that given the seriousness, detention at Koro Toro was not extreme. A landslide triggered by heavy rains in southern Ethiopia has killed at least 13 people, and the number of fatalities is expected to rise. Samuel Fuller, Zone Chief Administrator of Wolaita, said more than 300 people have been evacuated from the area in Kindo Didaya district, and the number of those unaccounted for remains unknown. Monday's landslide appeared to be less deadly than the one that occurred last month in another area in southern Ethiopia, where more than 200 people were killed. Landslides are common during Ethiopia's rainy season, which started in July and is expected to last until mid-September.
Also, it's a good time to stay on that story because the death toll, as we understand, has reached 13 lives, which has been lost in the landslide in southern Ethiopia Monday. This is just not far from the similar incident that occurred last month. Now, according to the local authority, we understand that more than 300 people have been evacuated from the area in the Kindo district, and also the number of those unaccounted for remains unknown. Monday's landslide appears to be less deadly, as we know it, than the others that occurred last month in another area in the same southern Ethiopia, where more than 200 people were killed. Landslides are common during Ethiopia's rainy season, which started in July and is expected to last until mid-September. Let's connect now to Ethiopia and speak to Mekoneng Teshome, who is the Director for Alliance of Science, joining us now from Addis Ababa. Thank you so much, sir, for spending some time with us. The July slide is obviously reported to have killed more than 200 people, looking at the numbers that are coming through. Let's look at what's happening now. 13 more people have died. What more are you able to tell us about what's going on there? And Mekonen, if you can hear me, I was just asking about the latest death toll we're hearing of. Yes. What are you able to tell us?
Thank you very much. As you said, now it is a rainy season here in Ethiopia. So the extreme extreme weather conditions are continuing, like heavy rain, landslides, and the rainy season will continue up to September, as you said.
And there's obviously the question about geology and what we're talking about, southern Ethiopia. Give us a sense for those who are not aware of what happens in that part of the country and how, the geology of the area contributes to the frequency of landslides that we keep seeing there.
Yeah, actually, the place where now the current landslide is occurring is a mountainous area. So experts are saying that it should not be habitable. So the topography of the place is very difficult to reside there.
I see. And going forward, what are the the forecast telling us, and what are the experts also saying about what's likely to happen in the coming days?
Yeah, only yesterday, the Ethiopian Meteorological Agency forecasted heavy rains, heavy rains in the coming seasons. The rainy season have already started last June, but it will continue up to September. So the Meteorological Agency is forecasting, heavy rains.
And I'm now wondering what the recommendation is, what government appears to be taking into cognizance, knowing that, of course, the experts will be informing the solution. Looking at the vulnerabilities, what's likely to happen in terms of what the experts are recommending and what likely the government's response is likely to look like?
Yeah, actually, it is, the Ethiopian Disaster Prevention Commission has already launched activities in helping the victims, in helping, in the 500 people now in the area, and the government is doing, and other governments like the Arab Emirates, the United Arab Emirates has also provided, aids, food, critical items like food and other emergency things for the people.
Right. I would have to leave it here. Grateful for your time. Mekunang Tashomi, Director, Alliance for Science, joining us from Ethiopia. You're still watching Connect Africa here on the Joy News channel. Still ahead, we're looking forward to having that conversation on the Nigerian protest, which is still underway. Protest entering day 6 today. We have the latest for you. Please stay. For having you staying with us here on Connect Africa, because it's been 6 days of the nationwide protest against what they call hunger and the need for the leadership of Nigeria to address hardship facing the youth. Well, the protest under the hashtag End Bad Governance has received massive support and attendance, especially by the youth, who are demanding that President of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and his administration fix the economic hardship in the country. There is heavy security as we speak on the ground as business activities resume in parts of Lagos State. The other media outlets are reporting that 400 people approximately have been arrested in northern Nigeria for waving Russia's national flag during the protest. Well, amid this crackdown, the Army Chief Christopher Musa has warned that it is a treasonable offense to fly the flag of foreign countries. According to local media, some of these protesters have also called on Moscow to rescue them.
The End Bad Governance protest in Kaduna took a different dimension on the 5th day. The protesters hit the streets with the Russian flag. The protest later turns violent as public and private offices are looted by the protesters. It got to the point they attempted to hijack an armored personnel carrier. Unable to access it, they climbed all over, even as the driver tried to shake them off. The state government eventually declared a 24-hour curfew to stem the violence. In a statement signed by the overseeing commissioner for the Ministry of Internal Security and Home Affairs, Mr. Samuel Arwan, the government says the measure was taken in the interests of peace. There were also scenes of protesters flying the Russian flag in neighboring Katsina State. The protesters, mostly young people, started from the family home of late President Umaru Yar'Adua and marched through Kofodobi Street down to the defunct Yar'Kutungu Market. In Gusau, the Zamfara state capital, some protesters regrouped carrying Russian flag. The protesters are mostly children and youths who march across major points in the state capital, including Tudunwada, Freedom Square, the Government House, and Garabiu. Despite the 24-hour curfew in Plateau State, miscreants in Delimi area clashed with security. However, normalcy was restored following the reinforcement by security agencies. Meanwhile, Governor Morufin Tiri of Adamawa State has described the demand of the End Bad Governors protesters as genuine. In the statewide broadcast, the government states that there are macroeconomic policy issues that can best be addressed by the federal government.
Good governance is your right, and that is what we have all sworn to give you. That is what is our trademark in Adamawa State. As a government, we don't really need to protest you don't need to protest to remind us of this sacred responsibility. We are doing our best to cushion the effect of your hardship. We are particularly conscious of the disturbing youth bulge with a growing unemployment rate that is alarming.
Governor Fintri commended the people for hearkening to the government's call for calm as the state has been peaceful, assuring that his administration will ensure that their demands receive attention.
And of course, it's a good time to, of course, look at what's happening within Nigeria. 40 people, as we understand, are in the grips of the police. But we will be taking you live now to Nigeria as we, of course, get to learn more from journalists who are working on the ground. Amina Ataru is a freelance journalist and also a content creator working in Nigeria. She'll be joining us via Zoom shortly just to give us a sense of what's happening in there as we speak. We also have Olu Jimmy Aina, who is with Rave TV. Thank you so much for joining us here on Connect Africa. First off, let me start off by asking you why the protest is taking such a long time, knowing that the president has spoken about this. And I want to start off with you because there's the issue about the government response to the protest, both at the federal level and at the state level. What kind of response are we seeing from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and at the federal levels as well?
Thank you for having me. So we'll start with the reason why Nigeria has been protesting for the past 6 days, especially in the northern part of the country and also the south-south region. Even though the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu gave a speech about the protest, people weren't really, I would say, happy about the speech he gave. And what people are calling for is end bad governance. There's so much money, at the same time, there's so much poverty. A lot of Nigerians are so impoverished. In the past, in recent time, we've been eating at least 2 meals. But right now, it's even difficult to even have 1 meal per day. And so what most Nigerians are clamoring for right now is, first, give us constant electricity. At the same time, subsidy removal is not helping Nigerians. Even though it has its good, side, what Nigerians are really clamoring for right now is remove this fuel subsidy, because it has led to the constant increase in the standard of living in Nigeria. And guess what? How much are we earning? The federal government just increased minimum wage to 70,000 naira. Right here in Nigeria, 70,000 naira can't even buy a bag of rice. People are finding it difficult to feed. And a lot of people right now, there's even an increase in, I would say, drug abuse amongst the youth, because when you don't see food to eat, you're looking for something that's just going to knock you off and take you to sleep. So the federal government, we would say right now, the body language from the federal government, from what we're seeing, is not helping Nigerians. And that is why you could see that there's a high rate of protesters in northern Nigeria right now.
I see. And Amina, you'd want to hold on for us because Olujimi is also joining us from Nigeria, watching the protests from another perspective as well. Olujimi, your perspective on what's going on in Nigeria. We've seen, the protests continue even after the assurances given by the government.
Well, thanks for having me. Well, the protest, I would say, has a lot of undertone at this moment. First, the administration of Ahmed Bola Tinubu, decided, or I would say before he was sworn in or before he even won the election, had already informed that there was going to be a lot of reforms. Now, take note, Nigeria as a country, we've been for long decades living under large, or how would I say, subsidization. The government putting the bills for most of what we take for electricity, fuel as well. So coming in with such reforms, and of course, a lot of people didn't take it lightly. As you all know, Nigeria is a country where we do know that, is riddled with corrupt practices. And therefore, many people who, one way or the other, were benefiting from the previous system that we were used to, were sort of like fighting back. I'm not absolving the government on anything, because one thing is removing the fuel subsidy. Another is bringing in, measures that will cushion the effect of it. Of course, he brought in a lot of measures, and for instance, palliatives, distribution of palliatives, and many other things that he thought could.
It appears we've lost Olujimi there, but of course it's a good time to also be bringing in now Mukhtar Mouni. Mukhtar, Executive Director for West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. And guys, you want to hold on up there, I'll just come to you shortly. But Mukhtar, it's good to be talking to you at this moment. We're even seeing what some experts are calling as the infiltration of external parties, some individuals waving what appears to be a Russian flag. Do you believe that there's any sort of influence going on here from the external factors?
Well, clearly, of course, we're seeing the feature of, external influence in what is going on, not just in Ghana, but in Nigeria, but also in previous situations of, protests and, actions against state institutions or state governments. Even in our own country, you saw a few months ago when some individuals decided to protest, we saw the feature of Russian flags in that protest. We saw that in other cases, in Kenya, of course, not much of that. But we're seeing that in significant ways in the current situation in Nigeria. And that has given rise to a lot of speculations that Russia is deliberately featuring that in this protest.
Is that not rather far-fetched to be bringing in Russia at this moment?
If you look at the geopolitical dynamics and historically, these things, happen. States find ways to infiltrate or, influence local dynamics in terms of politics and in terms of leadership. It's not far-fetched. But at the moment, it's difficult to say exactly what Russia's direct role has been. Would you not have enough?
Some say it's just a wave of protests that we're seeing as an effect of what happened, for instance, in Kenya. So you have Kenya, then the others are following. Even in the UK now, protests are ongoing. Don't you feel that the world is just catching on to this? This craze, if we should call it.
I think it's understandable. If you look at it from various fronts, if you look at the, the political and economic ramifications of what has happened in the last, 4 years, you look at, the issues of COVID, the issues of the economic crisis that we're now dealing with. It is, it's a very global phenomenon that has affected economies all over the world.
Right, but
and
in the
places
case
where
of...
we do not have enough resilience factors, the impact is devastating, especially for countries like us in West Africa and Africa generally. And that's why these things, you know, are happening.
I want us to look at the Nigerian case, the response from the Nigerian government, and possibly what could be done. And do you feel, first of all, that a response from the Nigerian government is sufficient in addressing the issue? And what more could international organizations do to support the process?
Well, first of all, I mean, you've listened to a lot of correspondence from this country, and a lot of reports indicate that, look, what has happened, the response we're getting from the government, from President Tinubu, doesn't cut it. He has responded, he has given a speech, and yet the speech is only full of hope and then calling on people to stop on humanitarian grounds. But we do not see a plan in terms of how to respond to the issues and the grievances of the protesters. We are talking about cost of living crisis, and people are making references to the subsidies that hasn't helped them. They are making references to several things in terms of food and things of livelihood, you know, costs. They are so high. And we are talking about corruption, the systematic practices of misgovernance. Those things have not been responded to in his statement. And so we're, you know, it's not, you know, surprising that we're going to continue to see this protest go on, at least to the 10-day period that they give themselves.
We'll be talking about possibly the implications on countries such as Ghana, but I just want to go back onto the Zoom to wrap up with the two individuals shortly joining us from Nigeria, our colleagues with Rave TV, and Amina, who's also on with us. Amina, let me start off with you. How long is this going to go? I guess that's the biggest question on the minds of, you know, a lot of Ghanaians who are also watching keenly what's happening in Nigeria.
Well, we don't know, but looking at the countermeasures from the military and the government also setting a curfew, calling in a curfew in places like Kaduna. Jigawa started their protest today, this morning. They started, and we see that they started burning properties. You can still see the video on your screen there with the Russian flag that we call Russian flag. But for what many Northerners are, you know, saying is, when you look at, just speaking from the street now, when you look at the speech from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you could see that there were two flags there, right? Yeah. So they decided that, okay, this man is not actually listening to what we are saying. There's hunger. When there is hunger, it's two things. It's either there's an increase in crime activities, or people go on the streets. And so states are beginning to wake up. The man in the studio talked about the different countries. You can see what's happening in Bangladesh. We can see what's happening in the UK right now. It just seems that it's more like an awakening that is taking place right now. So in Nigeria, people don't want to stop. The federal government said that they distributed, they signed a grant of 570 billion or thereabouts to state governors. Who are the Nigerians getting these palliatives? Right. You're sharing bag of rice. Who are the Nigerians getting bag of rice? So we don't see, I don't know, I don't want to speculate, but from what we're seeing, people are not ready to go back into their houses. Oh, I see. And if the southwestern region should join this, then it simply means they're going to go on for a very long time. Interesting days ahead there. Oluwa, Jimmy, we lost you briefly when you were wrapping up the point there. Yeah, if you could just wrap up on that for us. Yeah, well, I would say we don't know exactly when the protest will actually stop, because some of the demands, the major demands from the protesters, the reversal of fuel subsidy removal, that is not coming back. The pegging of the currency, the naira, that is also not coming back. So, I mean, at this moment, it's left for President Ahmed Tinubu. Because on Sunday, I'm just wondering what's coming back, by the way. Well, we don't know what will come back. What we do know is that the government have said that these are the major things that the protesters are demanding for are not returning. There's no way it's going to return, you know, as we speak. So they will just have to find another solution on how to go. And that's what the federal government is doing, trying to use the states in order to push in more measures in order to sort of alleviate the hardship that the people are going through. But as it stands, that protest will continue in Nigeria. Well, some places have been peaceful, while some other places have been a bit chaotic, as we've seen from our videos on your screen. But as of now, we do not know when the protest will come to an end. I can imagine, and after a hard day's work, Amina and
Oluwajimi, you'd want to join us in Ghana for some Ghana jollof, but we'll leave that conversation for now. Bye, guys. You know, Mukhtar, let's wrap up with the point about, can Russia help? Because some are saying, well, come save us, quote unquote.
Well, the dynamics of what is happening now has compelled a lot of people to create a binary narrative for partnerships. And so it has compelled a lot of West African countries to either look west or further, you know, Russia. And our marriage with the West, you know, hasn't helped enough. And so there's a sense that the partnerships that, you know, built around development hasn't delivered to the people, what I call the entitlements of citizenship. And so there's the idea that Russia appears to be that strongman kind of leadership that can focus on development. And so there's that kind of narrative. And if you look at what has happened in Nigeria, if you listen well, you listen to the last speaker talk about undertones, there are many undertones in this case. And so we're looking at the economic aspect of it. Our long history with the IMF and the World Bank, and construed, I mean, or conceived in the concept, I mean, the context of, you know, conditionalities for our government, seem to project an idea that they are responsible for the fact that we haven't been able to get out of our...
And is that reality or propaganda for you?
Significantly, I would say part of it is a reality. It's as though we are put in a box to operate in a manner that undermines our capacity to freely, you know, lead our people out of that situation. But it's largely because we have been less innovative and less capable of looking inward to be able to use our existing resources and capability to get out of the mess. And so that kind of situation seemed to project Russia as the alternative. Luckily for Russia, Russia does not have the colonial baggage that many Western partners have with us. And so they come with that kind of clean sheet when it comes to partnership.
But is that the way to go?
We do not have evidence of that. We don't have evidence of Russia's involvement here, built around development that has delivered. We're yet to. And it's still a good thing for Russia, because if you look at the other partners, we've had almost half a century of partnership that hasn't delivered.
Ghana,
so it makes it look attractive.
Yeah, we're all interested in what then happens to the future of Ghana's democracy. We're becoming an oasis amongst, you know, many turbulent territories, right? That's just, you know, surrounding us. What's your projection for us, and how are groups, you know, actors such as civil society organizations working to curb that? Such as, we can take your organization. So what we do,
I mean, our ears are on the ground. We're picking, you know, and building trends to look at what is going on, and that is what we base on in terms of relating to our partners locally and internationally, and even beyond that. All governments or nations within this space, their national security ministers would be meeting. They would be meeting based on what is going on and monitoring what is going on and looking at how do they feature that, you know, does that inform their security measures to deal with crisis. Even here in our country, our national security minister and his team would be monitoring this and would be featuring that in planning to ensure that we do not suffer the same eventuality.
Grateful for your time. Mukhtar Bumuni Mukhtar, Executive Director for West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. It's been a pleasure having you on Connect Africa. This conversation will continue on the Joy News channel. My name is Blair. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.